talking some more underdog best ball strategies. Today, we're going to discuss some of my favorite picks after pick 100 in underdog drafts. Just a reminder, if you're a new underdog user, if you've not used underdog before, you can get a first-time bonus up to $100 as well as a free 6-month subscription to RotoWire.com. Just use our promo code RWNFL. You see it right there on your screen, RWNFL. If you're a new underdog user, just create an account, get a first-time deposit bonus up to $100. All right, let's get right into it. My favorite players going after pick 100 in underdog drafts. We start at the receiver position. It's Tyler Boyd of the Cincinnati Bengals. His ADP right now is 105 in underdog drafts. He's going off the board as the wide receiver 51. Look, it's Tyler Boyd. He's not an exciting player. He'll be 29 in November, but Tyler Boyd is one of, if not the best, number 3 wide receiver in the league. He'd be the number 2 receiver on a lot of teams that don't have guys like Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins ahead of him. This is a player who last season was the wide receiver 34 and what felt like a pretty average season for Tyler Boyd. He was the wide receiver 31 in 2021 and the wide receiver 29 in 2020. So he has a track record of finishing significantly higher than the low 50s. And this is a situation for me where I would rather have the number 3 receiver in the Cincinnati Bengals offense with Joe Burrow than the number 2 receiver in a much lesser offense. So I'm grabbing Tyler Boyd whenever I can, somebody who in those early 100s, you can still find a very productive wide receiver. Just a little bit further down the board, we find Pat Freiermuth, ADP of 108 in underdog drafts. It's all about touchdown progression when it comes to Pat Freiermuth in 2023, as well as overall progression of what was a very sluggish and predictable Pittsburgh Steelers offense last season. The targets were there for Freiermuth. He had 98 targets. The yardage was there, 11.6 yards per reception. That's fine for a tight end. Yet he only managed 2 touchdowns after putting up 7 touchdowns during his rookie season. The Steelers offense, however, only had 12 total passing touchdowns all season. That was by far the lowest in the NFL. We're kind of operating under the they can't possibly be that bad again principle. Mitch Trubisky will not be quarterbacking this team for half of the season. I like Kenny Pickett to take a step forward in year 2. The Steelers averaged only 18 points per game last season. They led the NFL in field goal attempts, one of the worst red zone teams in the league. Again, year 2, Kenny Pickett progressing, going into the season, knowing he's the starter. I think that comes around. Yes, you could tell me Darnell Washington, 3rd round pick out of Georgia. That's a little bit of a concern, especially in the red zone, but I think Freiermuth is still clearly the guy at tight end for the Steelers this season. Looking even further down the board, we get to Jamaal Williams going at pick 128 in underdog drafts. That makes him the RB 43. Now, in all likelihood, he's not going to run away with the league lead in rushing touchdowns again. So I get the regression. You have to bake that in. He's switching teams. 2022 was kind of an all-time anomaly type of season for a player of Jamaal Williams' caliber, but he finished as the RB 13. And yes, the touchdowns, of course, were a huge part of that. But even if you bake in some regression, he shouldn't be going this late in underdog drafts. I mean, he's coming off the board again as RB 43. Keep in mind, Alvin Kamara, we have no idea if he's going to miss 2 games, 4 games, maybe more. Who knows at this point? Those will be extremely valuable weeks at the beginning of the season if and when Alvin Kamara misses time. I also expect a better version of this New Orleans offense this season, better quarterback play under Derek Carr. New Orleans only had 12 rushing touchdowns as a team last season. That number should rise, especially against what's a very favorable schedule. Jamaal Williams, I'm comfortable pushing him up my board, taking him closer to pick 100 than pick 130. All right, let's move to another running back who I like. Tyler Allgeier of the Atlanta Falcons. His ADP right now, 144 in underdog drafts. That makes him the RB 46. We know about the Bijan Robinson takeover, right? You don't draft Bijan Robinson in the top 10 to not use them as your bell cow back right away. But you can get Tyler Allgeier post pick 150 in a lot of underdog drafts. Again, it's all about Bijan Robinson this season, but keep in mind, Atlanta led the league in rushing attempts last year. They were 4th in yards per carry. This was a high volume and highly effective rushing offense. I don't really see that changing. Of course, we'd like to see more production through the air for this Atlanta offense, but still very much wait and see when it comes to Desmond Ridder and whether he's capable of pushing this offense to the next level. Again, Bijan Robinson was drafted to be the workhorse back here, and I fully expect that to be the case, but the Falcons ran the ball 559 times last season. Bijan Robinson isn't going to carry the ball 559 times. He could approach 300 carries. That's something only 4 rookies have done since 2010, but that still leaves a decent chunk of the workload for Tyler Allgeier. He had just over 200 carries a year ago. Yes, Cordero Patterson's still in the mix, but I think we see Atlanta continue to scale back his workload, maybe use him more out of the backfield as a pass catcher. We already saw some of that toward the end of last season. Bottom line for me, in this offense specifically, Tyler Allgeier can still be a top 35 running back in fantasy football drafts. He's not going to win you your league. It's not make or break in your draft whether you land Tyler Allgeier or not, but there's a lot of value to be had here for a guy who's going around pick 150. And finally, that brings us to the 5th player on our list, Mike Gesicki, ADP of 186 in underdog drafts. That makes him the tight end 23. And look, there's a reason that Mike Gesicki is available in the 16th round of underdog drafts. He very quickly fell out of favor in Miami last season, just was not a good scheme fit for what Mike McDaniel wants to do with that offense. He had an 8-game stretch in the second half of the season in which he only caught 7 total passes, only had 52 total targets all season after putting up at least 85 targets in the previous 3. So I get why people are down on Mike Gesicki, but we have to keep in mind that he is now in a much, much better situation with a team that wants him and needs him to be a part of this passing game. The Pats love to use 2 tight end sets. They haven't really had a pass catcher like Gesicki to pair with Hunter Henry. And even despite falling out of favor in Miami last season, Gesicki was still the tight end 23 in PPR last year. To me, that was the absolute worst case scenario for Mike Gesicki, and now he's being drafted as if that's going to happen again. I don't really think that's the case. Now, keep in mind, Mike Gesicki was the tight end 8 in 2021, the tight end 7 in 2020, and the tight end 12 in 2019. So when he's in a situation that's favorable to his skill set, he has a history of producing at a high level. And when you go through drafts beyond Travis Kelce, really beyond the top 5 or 6 tight ends, things get stacked up pretty quickly. I mean, in my opinion, there's not much of a reason to grab a mid-level tight end in round 7, 8, 9 when you could get pretty comparable talent much, much later in a lot of these drafts. A year ago, the tight end 7 and the tight end 16 were essentially separated by 1 fantasy point per game. So there's not a huge difference there once you get beyond those top 5 or 6 guys. I'm not telling you to draft Mike Gesicki as your every week starter, but he's become one of my favorite late round values to pair with a higher ranked tight end at that position. Now, I'm not telling you to draft Mike Gesicki and expect to start him every single week, but especially in a best ball format, I really, really like the upside here that you're getting in some drafts close to pick 200 overall. All right, that'll do it. Those are my top 5 values after pick 100 in underdog drafts. Again, you see the code on your screen, promo code RWNFL. That's RWNFL. If you're a new underdog user, just sign up. You'll get a first deposit bonus up to $100, as well as that free 6-month subscription to RotoWire.com.